So here's the question. How do you control anger? How do you keep it locked up to where it's healthy and a motivator, not a destroyer of your life?
Life is not about you living in the past. It's not about you living in fear. It's about your dreams. It's about what you believe. Life is about you choosing your future.
Lessons for the future begin here.
Welcome to the Choosing Your Future podcast. It's a pleasure being with you today. And before we get started, visit our website at choosingyourfuture.org, and you're going to find all kinds of neat stuff. There's music on there. I've done a jazz album. It's a little jazz trio. It's called Hymns and Jazz, and you can take a listen to it on there. It's listened to in 51 countries right now, and we're really honored about that. And getting a lot of good results. Matter of fact, we're fixing to do another one called, I can't think of the name of it. Hymns, The Color of Hymns and Jazz. And both of them are going to be, well, the second one's going to be really good, but the Hymns and Jazz is already out, and it's really done a lot of great things, and we're excited about it. But like I said, if you go to the website, choosingyourfuture.org, you're going to find all kinds of stuff there. And if you like the podcast, share them. Hopefully they're helpful to you. Let's get started. We were talking about last time about how anger is an emotion that can motivate you. But if it gets out of control, it can start affecting your mind. And that's one of the definitions of anger, that it reaches up, it reaches out, from a Greek standpoint. From the Greek standpoint, based upon the New Testament of the Bible. And so when anger is not kept in check, because it can be a motivator, okay? It's not about fighting, it's about motivation. What am I motivating? To do good or to do bad? And when you motivate to do good with your anger, it causes you to be productive. I gave an example. You might see an injustice done, and so what you want to do is do something about it. And, it may cause you to volunteer more. It may cause you to maybe run for a political office, or to be a fireman, policeman, lawyer, something, doctor. I don't know what the deal is, but anger can be a motivator to cause you to do something that's positive if it stays in check. I likened it to a little circle in our chest. It's like a little corral with a fence. And as long as it stays in there, it can be a positive motivator. But if it breaks that realm, it reaches out, as we found out one of the definitions are, up into the mind, and it starts polluting the mind. As a matter of fact, we found out in the last episode that it affects neurons, that causes us in the brain, that causes us to have temporary memory loss, affects our judgment, even affects our immune system. And so it's really important that we understand anger, how to handle it. A lot of people think if we just unleash anger, we're okay, But actually what that does, it makes it worse. If you think you've got to fight it out, or you've got to just let it go and, bust on somebody, you just vent on somebody. Well, that actually is worse on you and them. It almost starts developing layers like a callus or like a sword. It starts just scabbing over and just starts building more and more tough skin. And what happens is you stop being sensitive to the things of God, sensitive to the needs of others, and so on and so forth. I'm going to give you my definition of anger, and then we're going to look at some scripture that will kind of back this up. The foundation for all sin is based upon two emotions: anger and lust. And you can research this. If you go throughout the Bible and you look at the sins that were done, it was either out of anger or out of lust. And when I say lust, I'm not just talking about sexual desires. I'm talking about the desires for things. Matter of fact, we found out that anger leads to covetousness in the last episode. But let me give you a definition, the best definition I can give you of anger. I want you to imagine two things. One's going one direction, one's going the opposite direction. And what happens is when they meet, they rub. And when they rub, it sets a spark, or it's like friction. That's anger. Your desires, your beliefs, your thoughts, your way of thinking is going one direction, and then when something that is opposed to your thinking, to your way of life, to your belief, and so on and so forth, it comes at you at an opposite direction, and when it hits you, it causes a friction. And this friction causes a spark to trigger emotions. I've noticed this, and maybe you found this to be true, but nobody ever gets angry at anything they agree with. It's always things they don't agree with. Well, as we read last time, it's really important that we are very slow to becoming angry. I read this last time, but I'm going to read it one more time because I think it's important, because this is what happens when you let anger get out of that little corral. It affects your mind. It affects your judgment. It affects your wisdom and understanding. It affects everything you think, and it's like a virus in a computer. It starts eating away at your mind. And before you know it, your mind is consumed with anger, revenge. But here's a sign of an angry person. They're always stirring up strife. And let's look. Proverbs 29:22 says, an angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgression. So notice the progression. An angry man stirs up strife, and if he remains angry for long term, he becomes a furious man, and he starts leading a life of many transgressions or many sins. Well, it's not healthy, number one. But the key thing I want you to see is what happens when a person is angry. They begin to stir up stuff. They begin to stir up strife. And it becomes such an unhealthy lifestyle. Now, again, anger is a base emotion in us, like happy and sad and so on and so forth. But when we look at it, it's got to stay in its proper place, okay? So let's look at Ephesians 4:26, and notice what it says, be ye angry and sin not. Okay, that's important. Don't be angry with sin. But it's okay to be angry with proper motivation, especially for things that are for righteous causes. It's a motivator. But when being angry becomes sin, this is when we have the issue. And notice what it says, don't let the sun go down on your wrath. If you are angry about something with somebody, it's better to settle it before you rest. Because even in your sleep, you're still dealing with this anger in the subconscious. Your mind, and we've talked about this, I think, on an episode, that your subconscious mind is always in record mode. Even when you're asleep, you're picking up things. And when you are sleeping, your mind is still at work. And if you've let anger penetrate that barrier and get into a place of the mind, and you've let the sun go down, in other words, even in your sleep, it will still even fester even greater when you wake up in the morning. And ironically, the next verse says, neither give place to the devil. How do we give place to the devil? Well, number one, when we let our anger get out of control, he has a lot to work with. And so that's why it's always important before you go to sleep at night, you get some issues dealt with emotionally. This way, when your mind is at rest, it's not thinking subconsciously or recording subconsciously things that could cause you to even build on those emotions in a more negative way when you wake up in the morning. I can't stress this enough. It's a serious thing. If it's the foundation of all sin, anger and lust, then it's important we pay attention to it and understand it so we know how to deal with it. I'll read you another verse. Ephesians 4:31 says, "Let all bitterness, wrath, and anger, and clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice." So notice anger, clamor, which is a lot of evil speech, bitterness, wrath, let it be far from you. And be ye kind one to another, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, even as God, for Christ's sake, hath forgiven you. Anger, again, because it is the foundation of many sins, one of the greatest things that it does, it really affects the way we talk about people. It affects our viewpoint of a lot of people, which causes us to carry out those emotions in a more negative way. Let's look at James 1:19, and it says, "Wherefore, my beloved brethren, let every man be swift to hear, slow to speak, and slow to wrath." Now, let's read that one more time. "Wherefore, my brethren, let every man be swift to hear." Hear what? Hear wisdom, logic, reasoning. Okay? Slow to speak. Slow to speak what? Negative things. Negative words, evil speech. But notice this, and slow to wrath. Very slow. Don't be one of these people that just immediately fly off the handle and just say, okay, that's it. I'm getting revenge. Here we go. No. Be swift to hear, quick to hear. Wisdom, knowledge, logic, understanding. Slow to speak. Let your actions be real slow and slow to wrath. Because here's why. The next verse tells us, "For the wrath of a man worketh not the righteousness of God." So the slower you're acting in your wrath and your anger, it gives you time to literally think about what you're doing before you do it. There's some people, I've met them, and I'm sure I've been this way once or twice, maybe 3, 4 times. But there's times maybe we've gotten so angry that we just didn't even think about what we were doing. We just did it without thinking, and man, did we have regrets. Well, that's the thing. That's the whole purpose of being slow to anger. You're giving yourself an opportunity to control your emotions. You're giving yourself an opportunity to listen to sound logic and reasoning. The slower you are to anger, the quicker you're able to hear. If you're quick to anger, the slower you're able to hear. Okay? And this is the one thing I want us to understand. If we can become people that are slow with anger, then we're quick to hear what God may say about the situation. We're quick to hear wisdom in this situation. We're quick to hear logic, soundness. Most importantly, we don't offend people, lose relationships. You know, that's the saddest thing about anger. A lot of people have lost friends, family members, and relationships because they said something they regretted. We've all done it. The great thing is there is forgiveness with God. Even if they don't forgive us, we can still forgive them. And that way, when you lay down at night and you sleep, you can find rest and peace. You know what? God has a way of restoring things if you give him a chance. See you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Choosing Your Future podcast. For more information, please visit choosingyourfuture.org. That's choosingyourfuture.org.